Eleanor Griffin was lost in thought about her life as she sipped a cup of coffee by the window on a rainy morning. She had never been able to escape her role as the quiet eldest daughter in the family. Her fingers gently caressed the rim of her mug as she thought about her mother's birthday dinner tonight. Patricia would be turning 65 today. Her showy, materialistic mother had strongly insisted on celebrating this milestone at the upscale restaurant Lucille. "You've definitely secured the reservation, haven't you?" When her mother called during breakfast, Patricia's voice contained a note of doubt, as if suggesting Eleanor couldn't be trusted with such an important task. "Of course, Mama. I made the reservation last month," Eleanor replied. In truth, the reservation at this extremely popular restaurant would have been impossible without her connections. But she didn't feel the need to explain this to her family. As Eleanor hung up the phone, her eyes drifted to a series of novels lined up on the bookshelf in her study. The name E.G. Winters gleamed in gold on each spine. This was her secret life. Not as a mundane employee at an accounting firm, but as a New York Times best-selling author. This double life had begun 10 years ago, after her father passed away. Jonathan Griffin had been the only family member who always supported Eleanor's creative talents. After his death, the family dynamics changed dramatically. Her mother Patricia and sister Vanessa became more blatant in their dismissal of Eleanor. In their eyes, she was just an ordinary woman, with no ambition or special talent. "Ellie, what did you get for Mama's birthday present?" A text message from her sister Vanessa interrupted her thoughts. Vanessa had married 4 years ago, but recently divorced and moved back in with their mother. "It's a secret. I'll save it for tonight," Eleanor replied. In fact, she had booked a luxurious trip to Paris for her mother. Thanks to the royalties from her latest book, such extravagance was now possible. As Eleanor was finishing her coffee, her phone rang. The display showed it was Penguin Publishing, and her heart raced. It was her editor at the publishing house, Marcus Simons. "Eleanor, I have wonderful news. Universal Pictures has made an offer to buy the film rights to your A Light in the Darkness series. I'm meeting with a producer today to discuss it. How about Lucille Restaurant at 6 p.m.? Eleanor gasped in surprise and excitement. "Marcus, that's wonderful. But tonight is Mama's birthday, and I'm supposed to have dinner with my family at the same restaurant. What a coincidence. Then let's meet before your family dinner. How about 5 p.m.? An hour should be plenty of time. This is an opportunity you can't miss, Eleanor." After a moment's hesitation, Eleanor agreed. "All right, let's meet at 5. But I'll have to tell my family I'll be a little late." After hanging up, Eleanor began to think about her next problem, telling her family she would be late. As expected, when she contacted Vanessa, her sister sighed. "Always work. Does that tiny accounting firm really demand so much of you?" On Mama's special day, too, Vanessa's voice contained contempt. "I'm sorry, but I have a meeting with an important client. I promise I'll arrive an hour later," Eleanor promised. "I'll let Mama know." "But she won't be happy," Vanessa said and hung up. Eleanor sighed and looked out the window. The rain had stopped, and sunlight was beginning to break through the clouds. Should she someday reveal the truth to her family? Her success, her wealth, and who she really was? Or should she continue to keep her secret? She pondered this dilemma for a while. In a way, this double life protected her. As Eleanor Griffin, she was exposed to her family's harsh criticism and indifference, but as E.G. Winters, she was respected and admired. Someday, she quietly told herself. Someday, they will know the real me. She stood up and began preparing for tonight. Documents for contract negotiations, champagne to celebrate success, and a special birthday card for her mother. Tonight would be special in many ways. Eleanor could feel it. The wheels of fate had begun to turn, and her two worlds were finally about to intersect. At 4 p.m., Eleanor was making final preparations in her apartment. She carefully took out a black silk dress from her closet. She usually reserved this dress for literary award ceremonies or important publishing parties. Today was special. The film rights to her novel might be secured. Eleanor put on the dress and stood in front of the mirror. The simple yet sophisticated dress fit her slender figure perfectly. She carefully selected a necklace and earrings, and styled her hair in an elegant updo. "This will do," she smiled at her reflection. She was satisfied with her appearance as E.G. Winters. But her expression quickly clouded. Tonight, when meeting her family, she would need to change into more modest attire to meet their expectations. As Eleanor, she couldn't appear to be trying too hard in their eyes. As she was making the final touches, her phone rang. It was her mother. "Come right away. The restaurant has sent a special limousine. Vanessa and I are already ready." Eleanor was confused. "A limousine? I didn't arrange anything." "It must have been when you made that reservation," Patricia said smugly. "They know who I am. Now, hurry up." Before the call ended, Eleanor heard her sister's high-pitched laugh. She peeked out the window and indeed saw a luxurious white limousine parked in front of the house. This was strange. When she had made the reservation at the restaurant, she had used the name E.G. Winters rather than her own name, but she hadn't requested any transportation service. While Eleanor was pondering this, her mother and sister came out of the house. Patricia was wearing an emerald green evening gown with a flashy pearl necklace. Vanessa had chosen a bright red dress, adorned with gold accessories. Both were dressed to the nines to show off. "What are you dawdling for?" Patricia called from the entrance. Eleanor hurried down the stairs toward the entrance. "I'm not ready yet. And I told you I'd be a little late, remember? I have an important meeting." "Your little accounting job is more important than my birthday?" Patricia pursed her lips. Eleanor took a deep breath internally. "Of course not. But it's a really important meeting. I'll be there in an hour, as I promised." "Fine," Patricia said with dissatisfaction. She began walking toward the limousine. The chauffeur opened the door and bowed respectfully. "Let's go, Vanessa," Patricia said. Before getting into the limousine, Vanessa looked Eleanor up and down. "Is that what you're wearing tonight? Isn't it a bit plain?" "No, I plan to change after my meeting," Eleanor replied. At this point, Eleanor stepped forward to get into the limousine. But her mother quickly waved her hand to stop her. "Aren't you coming later? This car is for me and Vanessa. You can come on your own." "But..." Eleanor began, but Vanessa interrupted with a laugh. "It'll be good exercise, and it suits a poor person. Your cheap dress wouldn't fit in this limousine anyway." Eleanor felt the sting, but tried not to show it on her face. This wasn't new. Her family had always treated her this way. "All right," she answered calmly. "I'll see you at the restaurant." "Don't be late," Patricia warned. The limousine door closed, and the car slowly drove away. Eleanor stood there for a moment, struggling with the complex emotions welling up inside her. She loved her family, but their attitude was sometimes unbearable. As she was lost in thought, her phone rang again. "It's Marcus. I have good news. Film producer James Connor is coming to New York unexpectedly. He'll be joining our meeting. VIP treatment. That's why I arranged for a car. It should be heading to your apartment now." Eleanor was surprised. "A car? When will it arrive?" In about 10 minutes. It's a black Mercedes. The driver's name is Craig. Just at that moment, she saw a black luxury Mercedes turning onto the street. Eleanor couldn't help but smile. It seems to have arrived already. Thank you. Great. See you at the restaurant. Today is going to be special. After hanging up, the black car quietly stopped in front of her house. A young man got out of the driver's seat and bowed politely toward her. Ms. Griffin, or rather, Ms. Winters. I'll escort you. Eleanor smiled and got into the black luxury car. As she sank into the soft leather seat, she reflected on the events of the night. Unlike her mother and sister's limousine, this car was stocked with her favorite mineral water and champagne. As the car started moving, Eleanor felt a small joy in her heart. Tonight, a long-suppressed truth would be revealed. She was ready to end her double life. The time had come for E.G. Winters and Eleanor Griffin to no longer be separate people. The car slid into the rear of Lucille, to the VIP entrance. As Eleanor got out of the car, Marcus was waiting for her. He was dressed in a gray suit and greeted her with his usual calm smile. Perfect. Right on time, Marcus took her hand and shook it. James Connor has already arrived. He's a big fan of your work. Eleanor took a deep breath. This was an important moment for her career. I'm ready, she smiled. Inside the restaurant, soft lighting and elegant decor created an atmosphere of luxury and calm. Marcus led Eleanor to a small private room at the back of the restaurant. Upon entering, a middle-aged man was sitting on a sofa. He stood up and walked toward Eleanor. Ms. E.G. Winters, it's an honor to meet you, he said with a warm smile. I'm James Connor. The A Light in the Darkness series changed my life. Eleanor smiled and shook his hand. Thank you for your kind words. I'm a big fan of your work as well. The three sat at the table, and champagne was poured. Let's make a toast, Marcus raised his glass. To E.G. Winters' wonderful talent, and to the success of the Light in the Darkness film adaptation. The glasses clinked, and Eleanor felt a pleasant excitement. She had worked for years for this moment. Now, let's get down to business. James opened a black leather portfolio containing documents. We want to purchase the film rights for all 5 volumes of your series. The budget is over $100 million per film. Furthermore, you'll be given authority as a production consultant. Eleanor couldn't hide her surprise. That's more than I imagined. Your work transcends ordinary fantasy novels, James continued enthusiastically. The themes of human psychology, family complexity, and personal growth are beautifully portrayed. We want to preserve that essence. Marcus turned to Eleanor. These are unprecedented favorable terms, Eleanor. The publishing house fully supports this. Eleanor nodded slowly. I accept the proposal. But I have one condition. She hesitated for a moment. I want my real name to appear in the credits. The room fell silent for a moment. Marcus showed a surprised expression. Your real name? As Eleanor Griffin? Yes, Eleanor said with determination. I want to end my anonymous life as E.G. Winters. I think it's time to be recognized as myself. James looked at Eleanor with curious eyes. That's an interesting decision. Is there a special reason? Eleanor gazed into the distance. It's about my family. They don't know my true identity. Tonight, they're also celebrating my mother's birthday at this restaurant. I think it's time to reveal the truth. Marcus nodded in understanding. He knew a little about Eleanor's family situation. That's a wonderful decision. Once E.G. Winter's identity is revealed, the publishing house can also develop new marketing strategies. The three discussed detailed contract terms and finally reached an agreement. As she signed the contract, Eleanor's hand trembled slightly. This was a major turning point in her life. "Congratulations, Eleanor," Marcus said as he returned the contract to the portfolio. "From tonight, you are officially a Hollywood star author." James stood up and extended his hand to her. "I look forward to a wonderful collaborative relationship." Eleanor also stood up and shook his hand. "I look forward to it as well." When the meeting ended, the clock showed 6:30 p.m. Eleanor was 30 minutes late for her appointment with her family. "I must hurry," she told Marcus. "My family is waiting." "Of course," Marcus smiled. "But let's toast to this opportunity. I'd like to introduce you to the restaurant owner, Robert Coleman. He's also a big fan of yours." The two left the private room and headed toward the main area of the restaurant. Eleanor casually looked around, searching for her mother and sister's table. They were seated near the center of the main dining area. Patricia was clearly in a bad mood, repeatedly checking her watch. As Eleanor and Marcus were walking, a tall man with an elegant air approached them. He was dressed in a wine-red suit and wore a warm smile. "Marcus, it's been a while," the man said. "Robert, hello," Marcus shook his hand. "Let me introduce you. This is E.G. Winters, or more accurately, her real name, Eleanor Griffin." Robert's eyes shone with surprise and excitement. "Really? You're E.G. Winters?" His voice was loud enough to be heard by those nearby. "Your Light in the Darkness series is one of the best works I've read in my life." Eleanor smiled and was about to express her gratitude when she noticed her sister Vanessa's surprised expression. Vanessa had noticed their interaction and was whispering to her mother. Patricia was now looking in her direction as well. "Mr. Robert, thank you for your kind words," Eleanor replied politely. "Actually, I'm planning to have dinner with my family here tonight. It's my mother's birthday." "That's wonderful," Robert was delighted. "Please accept special champagne as a gift from me. And congratulations on your film contract. I heard from the staff." Marcus placed his hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "Well, you should go to your family now. Let's discuss the details tomorrow." Eleanor nodded and said goodbye to Marcus and Robert. Then, taking a deep breath, she began walking toward her mother and sister's table. As she approached, she saw that her mother and sister's expressions were filled with confusion and surprise. Patricia straightened her back and furrowed her brow. Vanessa's mouth was half open as she stared at Eleanor's elegant dress. Eleanor said in a calm voice, "I'm sorry I'm late." "What's going on?" Patricia asked in a confused voice. "The restaurant owner was talking to you. And your clothes are." Her words trailed off as a waiter brought champagne to the table. "Special champagne from Mr. Coleman," the waiter said politely. "It's to celebrate Ms. Griffin's film contract." Eleanor smiled at the waiter and said, "Thank you." After he left, she slowly took her seat. "What film contract?" Vanessa asked with wide eyes. "Aren't you an accountant?" Eleanor took a deep breath. It was time to reveal the truth. "Actually, I've been living a secret life," she began quietly. "I write novels under the pen name E.G. Winters." E.G. Winters? Patricia exclaimed in surprise. "The best-selling author?" Eleanor nodded. "Today, a film contract for my novel series was finalized. That's why I was late." The table fell into silence. Mother and sister stared at Eleanor, at a loss for words. Patricia's eyes showed disbelief. Vanessa blushed and lowered her gaze. Why didn't you tell us? Patricia finally managed to say. Eleanor looked straight into her mother's eyes. I never had the chance. And she hesitated for a moment. To be honest, no one believed in my talent or abilities. Patricia tried to say something, but no words came out. In her eyes, confusion, shock, and a little guilt were visible. Vanessa said in a small voice, that limousine, we told you to walk here. I came in my own car, Eleanor quietly replied. The publishing house arranged it for me. Just at that moment, the restaurant owner Robert approached the table again. His face wore a warm smile. Ms. Griffin, is everything to your liking? He asked politely. Yes, thank you, Mr. Coleman, Eleanor answered with a smile. Wonderful, Robert was pleased. And here is the special birthday dinner menu for your mother. The chef has prepared a special course for you. Patricia received the menu from Robert with an expression of surprise and confusion. Thank you, she said in a small voice. After Robert left the table, the three women were again enveloped in silence. Eleanor took her champagne glass and quietly said, Let's toast to Mama's birthday. And to new beginnings. Patricia and Vanessa, who still didn't seem to fully understand the situation, slowly raised their glasses. The three glasses quietly touched in the air, making a small sound. Eleanor observed her family's reactions. Patricia's face showed complex emotions, surprise, confusion, and something gradually welling up. Vanessa kept her eyes lowered, fidgeting with the edge of her napkin. E.G. Winters. Patricia finally opened her mouth. I've been reading your books for years. I've read the third volume of A Light in the Darkness multiple times. Eleanor was surprised. She didn't know her mother had read her work. Really? Yes, of course, Patricia blushed slightly. That scene where the protagonist Marianne struggles with her relationship with her mother makes me cry every time I read it. Eleanor smiled quietly. The character of Marianne had indeed drawn much inspiration from her own life. Particularly, the complex relationship with her mother somewhat reflected her relationship with Patricia. I didn't know that. Patricia sighed deeply. Why didn't you tell us? For 10 years. Eleanor took her wine glass and slowly swirled it. At first, I thought I might fail. But even after I succeeded. She continued, choosing her words carefully, when something good happened in my life, it was often belittled or completely ignored. That's not true. Vanessa suddenly exclaimed. But the guilt that flashed in her eyes betrayed the lie in those words. Vanessa, Eleanor said gently. Just earlier, you told me, it'll be good exercise, and it suits a poor person. Vanessa's face turned bright red. It was a joke. I didn't mean. I've heard such jokes every day for 10 years, Eleanor said quietly, with no anger, just stating a fact. Especially after Papa died. Tears welled up in Patricia's eyes. Jonathan, did he know about your talent? Eleanor nodded. When I started writing my first novel, only Papa supported me. After his death, I decided to use a pen name. E.G., the initials of Eleanor Griffin, and Winters from Papa's favorite season. The table was again wrapped in silence. The waiter brought appetizers, but no one seemed in the mood to eat. How successful are you? Vanessa asked in a small voice. Eleanor shrugged. The series has sold over 20 million copies worldwide. It's been translated into 23 languages, and today a film contract was finalized. With a budget of over $100 million per film, it's planned to be a 5-part series. The color drained from Patricia and Vanessa's faces. Her mother took her wine glass and drained it in one go. That small accounting firm? Patricia asked. It's fictional, Eleanor answered. Technically, since I manage the finances of my publishing house, it's not a lie to say I do accounting work. Vanessa suddenly began to laugh. A hysterical, unbelieving laugh. You. She couldn't continue. Look down on me, Eleanor completed her sentence. But let's put an end to that. I want to build a new relationship starting today. Patricia took a small tissue from her handbag and dabbed at her eyes. I'm ashamed to have misunderstood my own daughter so much. Mama, Eleanor took her mother's hand. What's important is not the past, but the future. I've always loved you both. I just needed a space where I could be myself. But this morning's limousine. Vanessa began. Eleanor smiled. That was in response to my reservation. The restaurant owner knew my identity. And when I arrived in the VIP car arranged by the publishing house, our faces must have been worth seeing, Vanessa said with self-deprecation. The three laughed quietly, and the tension gradually eased. Well, Patricia straightened her posture. As a mother, let me say I won't forgive you for keeping this secret for 10 years. But she smiled a little. I'm very proud of you. And Patricia suddenly adopted a businesslike tone. From tomorrow, I'll check all the documents and contracts to make sure no one is deceiving you. Eleanor couldn't help but laugh. This was the Patricia she knew. A mother who always wanted to maintain control. But this time, she felt a kind of affection in that demeanor. All right, Mama, she agreed. But I have an excellent legal team, and I've managed my business successfully for 10 years. I'll still check, Patricia wouldn't yield. Vanessa raised her glass. To E.G. Winters, no, Eleanor Griffin. The three women clinked glasses again. In this simple ritual, there was a new beginning, a new understanding. In her heart, Eleanor silently thanked her father. If Jonathan had been here, he would surely have been proud. 1 year later, in Eleanor's penthouse apartment near Central Park in New York. The greenery of the park spread out before her from the window. Eleanor stood on the balcony, enjoying her morning coffee. Just 1 week until the film's premiere. Turning around, she saw Patricia coming out from the living room. Even past 65, her mother remained elegant and dignified. She wore an emerald brooch on her chest and stood next to Eleanor. Are you nervous? Patricia placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. Eleanor smiled. A little. But the director stayed faithful to the original, and the response at the test screening was very positive. Eleanor's life had changed dramatically over the past year. After E.G. Winters' identity was revealed, the media flocked to her. Interviews, television appearances, and book signings followed one after another. And the film adaptation of Light in the Darkness had become one of the most anticipated projects in Hollywood. Her relationship with her mother had also changed. At first, Patricia tried too hard to step into Eleanor's world. She checked contracts, gave advice on interviews, and sometimes even tried to interfere with marketing strategies. But as Eleanor gently established boundaries, the two gradually began to build a healthy relationship. Have you heard from Vanessa? Eleanor asked. Yes, she's coming back tomorrow, Patricia answered. The volunteer trip seems to have changed her. Vanessa's transformation was the most dramatic. At first, the sister was jealous of Eleanor's success. But after a few months, she reevaluated herself and joined an NGO supporting education in South America. How's the new novel coming along? Patricia asked. Eleanor picked up her coffee cup and took a sip. It's going well. I'm thinking of calling it her season of renewal. Is it a family story? Yes, Eleanor nodded. A story about repairing lost relationships. Tears welled up in Patricia's eyes. She gently kissed her daughter's cheek. Your papa would be so proud. Yes, Eleanor smiled. From the living room, Eleanor's phone rang, and the two returned to the room. An email had arrived requesting approval for the new book's cover design. Mother and daughter sat side by side, exchanging opinions as they looked at the design proposals. Sometimes there were differences of opinion, and Patricia would revert to old habits and become dominant. But each time, Eleanor quietly yet firmly asserted her position. It wasn't a perfect relationship, but a new foundation of mutual respect had been established. On Eleanor's laptop, the manuscript of her new novel was open. The prologue read, "True renewal does not begin by denying past pain, but by acknowledging it, accepting it, and learning from it. Family bonds sometimes constrain us, but they can also become the force that supports and helps us grow. Love is not about seeking perfection, but finding beauty in imperfection." Outside the window, the spring sunlight illuminated the trees in Central Park, symbolizing a new season, a new beginning.